Okay, okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here, and I must thank Rebecca for coordinating this and arranging this room and all. So, in this next hour or so, I'll talk about the journey that I took this summer to the roof of the world, or what is also known as Mount Everest, and coming back. So I want to share some of my videos I made, some pictures that lots of pictures that I have. Of course, time is not enough to show all the pictures, but I have selected a few that we will see. So this goal, I'm sure lots of people in the world have had this dream of climbing Mount Everest or standing on the summit of Mount Everest. And me too, as a child growing up, I had this dream. And although this was a very extraordinary goal, and I'm a very ordinary person, but I felt, after it was an accomplishment that I could do. And although it does not make me an extraordinary person, my goal was definitely extraordinary. Who am I and what defines me? So I've been a Leonian for 25 years, moved here in 1999, and I was born and brought up in India. My father was in the Air Force, I was an Air Force brat. and in India, after my school and college, I joined the Merchant Marine, and I sailed for a few years before I got married to my wife Leonia here. And I moved to the US in 1992. In 1999, I moved to Leonia, and then I worked in information technology until 2022, and since then, I'm a small business owner now. So that gives me some time to do the things that I do now. So I've been a hiker, mountaineer, runner, and all those things from 2012. 2012 was when I first climbed Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa, and after that, you can say I was hooked, and I kept doing it over and over again. My husband, my wife Lubna, I have 5 children, and I have 1 grandchild. So my mountaineering history, as I said, I started climbing in 2012, and I've only listed the major peaks here. In between, I have done some, I would do climbs, but 2012 I summited Mount Kilimanjaro. 2018 I climbed Mount Elbrus in Russia. That is in itself is a big story there, but because getting into Russia wasn't easy, but it's kind of impossible now, getting a visa there. But it was pretty difficult back then. 2019, I did the Everest Base Camp trek, and I was accompanied by my son Sammy, who's in the back here. He was 14 then. And after completing the trek, we climbed a 6,000 meter peak, a 6,119 meter peak with Sammy. And I believe at that time, he was the youngest guy who had summited that peak. 2020, we took a trip to Ecuador, and the goal was to climb 3 mountains higher. The goal was to climb 3 mountains, and Mount Cayambe, Mount Cotopaxi, and Mount Chimborazo. We succeeded in climbing Mount Cotopaxi, one out of 3. We could not climb Mount Cayambe or Mount Chimborazo back then. And 2021, I and my son's Nasser there, we attempted to climb Chimborazo again, and we failed because of bad weather. We had to abort our attempt and return. And 2023, I climbed Mount Aconcagua in Argentina. Now, Mount Aconcagua in Argentina stands at almost 7,000 meters, and that is the highest peak outside of Asia. And I climbed that mountain with, you must have heard of the Nirmal Purja, the person who made the 14 peaks, the person who climbed the 14 8,000 meter peaks within 6 months, and held that record for a long time, and that was recently broken last year. So I climbed Mount Aconcagua with NIMS Purja, and I was able to successfully summit. And this year, in May, 3 months ago, I climbed Mount Everest.
So before 2012, what mountains were you climbing to prepare yourself?
Nothing. My climbing history, my mountaineering history begins in 2012.
Wow. I love it. I love it.
Mount Elbrus, you take the lift up?
I did it both ways, because when I went up from the north side and we climbed up to the high camp, and then we had to turn back because there was lightning on the mountain. We were 700 feet away from the peaks. We came back, and then we went around and we took the lift to. We went on the other side of the mountain, took the lift up because we didn't really have time. So
it's a very dangerous mountain.
it is a very dangerous mountain. Yes, you cannot be off the fixed rope. The fixed ropes are attached, and you cannot be off the trail even for 5 feet away. You don't know what you may find.
Wow.
But the weather gets very bad.
Weather does get very bad, and a lot of blizzards, and weather can change any second actually. One moment it will be nice, and then it will just turn. And that's typical of almost all mountains. You can't really, there are no reliable weather reports. So, continuing on, so, what was my itinerary to the top of the world from my home in Leonia? So, April 2nd, I departed from here. So, April 3rd, 4th, we arrived in Kathmandu, did the preps. We started our climb on April 5th. So, April 5th to April 12th, we basically went on the Everest base camp trek. So, it takes us good 7 days to get up to the base camp. We'll go through the details. And from April 13th to April 30th was, our preparation, training for the climb, acclimatization, and what is called rotations. And once you're done with your training and your preparation, and you have to rest because your body takes a lot on the toll on the body. All those constant climbs that you're getting into, and then you get some rest before you start your summit attempt. So in my case, we started the summit attempt on May 13th, and for my summit push, and we reached the summit on the 19th. And from 20th till 25th onwards was descending, spending time in Kathmandu, getting a flight back home. So, my picture, this is where, I left on April 2nd. That's me, leaving my house, saying goodbye to my family, and then flying out of JFK and arriving in Kathmandu. I have a good friend, Rajan, that's him he's the one who introduced me to this operator that helps people climb Mount Everest.
What's the name of the operator? Is that the name of the operator?
No, this just says welcome to Nepal. This is from the airport.
Which operator did you use?
They're called Satori Adventures in Nepal. And in order to prepare, here's a video I recommend to Nepal, everyone. I had a very good night's sleep, and I woke up this morning to arrange all my stuff that I will be carrying with me. The hike starts tomorrow. And I just thought I'll walk over with you all on the gear that is needed to climb Mount Everest. Starting with my footwear. Okay, these are my sneakers, and I have 2 hiking shoes, 1 trail running, 1 regular hiking shoes, and then I have 2 sets of snowshoes. The smaller ones are good for 6,000 meters, and I'll be wearing these on my training climbs. These will be on the actual Everest climbs. These are good for 8,000 meters, and they're good for the summit. And next I have 2 sets of crampons. This is by far, I would say, the best invention made for climbing, because this is the one that helps you safely navigate the ice and the mountains. Next, I'm coming down here is all my clothing, starting from my socks. Of course, you need several. You don't want to wear sticky socks, so you need to carry as many pairs as you can. Your woolen hats, the balaclavas,
buffs, and then regular hats that I'll be wearing for during the hikes. You know, you have different hiking pants. These are the base layers, and somewhere here is my rain jacket and my rain pants, and these are my down puffy jackets, which are have several of them. And what you see there is my summit suit. That is the suit I will be wearing for on the day of the summit. And coming over here, that's my helmet. You don't have to say what it is. This is the harness. This is what secures me through to the safety lines via the ropes. And these are the tools that I use for ascending and descending the mountain. With the carbiners, these are the ones that connect me via short rope to the safety lines. These are my hiking poles, the ice axe. I've covered the end of the ice axe with old socks so that they don't tear into my other clothes. And then eye protection. I have two sets of glasses. I have one clear, one tinted, and then two glasses for with UV protection, because in ice you can without these you can get snow blindness. Then I have gloves of wearing warmness, and these are the summit gloves. These are good for apparently minus 50 or 60 degrees temperatures. Next, where do I sleep? I have two sleeping bags. This one is the minus 20 rated sleeping bag, which I'm going to use at the base camp, and the one below is the minus 40 degree sleeping bag, and this is minus 40 Fahrenheit. And I have three pads, sleeping pads, which I'll use under the sleeping bag. And here comes the most important part. My friends really love it. I think I made most of my friends because of these snacks, which Lubna packs for me, and my friends eat more than I do. Two water bottles, and these are different toiletries that you will need. And then this is the whole dispensary that Lubna packed for me. Where do I store all this stuff? Well, when coming here, I was using these 220-liter duffel bags that I used to carry all my gear in, and this will be my day pack, or the pack that I will be carrying all the way. Lastly, that's my laptop bag, which I don't intend using, but I just like to carry it around.
That's great.
Thank you. Thank you. And I did bring some of the stuff, like, for you to just, if you want to touch and feel and see how it is. My summit suit, my boots, my harness, ice axe.
But none of those snack packs, huh?
Oh, it's her fault. She's the one who packs for me this time of day.
Part two.
Part two.
Okay. Well, so this was our, April 2nd, April 3rd, when we had preparing for the climb. And on the day of the climb, we go in a small plane like that, and this plane seats about 15 or 20 people, and this is flown by specially trained pilots to all the way to Lukla. And from Lukla we start our hike, and this is, I have a pictures here. So we start our trek in Lukla. We go through several of these bridges that we have. These are like wire bridges that connect. There's a Sagarmatha stream that passes through our river. We crossed that several times on the way to the base camp. And so the next day we were at Facting. Interestingly, we start at Lukla, which is at 2,800 meters, and then on the first day of the hike we end up at 2,600 meters. So only on the first day we descend. We are at a lower altitude than we started. But from that day onward, it's a constant climb upwards and on. So on the second day, we went up to Namche Bazaar. Now, if you've seen the movies, Everest, every movie has, they show Namche Bazaar. So it's been, now it's grown to be quite a populated town, but for it seems like forever, all the Everest climbers have pass through Namche Bazaar. Namche Bazaar stands at almost, it's at a 3,400 meter elevation. So once we reached Namche Bazaar, the next day, we stayed in Namche Bazaar but did some acclimatization hikes. So at Namche Bazaar, there is a museum dedicated to Tenzing Norgay, and that's a statue there. And also at Namche Bazaar is the first time you get a view of Everest. So once we get to this point, you get a first view of Everest, and I zoomed in, and this is I don't know how clear the picture is, but this is a zoom picture of Everest. And what you see is not the cloud. This is beginning of April, so it's still very cold, and conditions are pretty nasty at the top of the airport, at the on the Everest summit. What you see is not the cloud, but actually the blowing snow.
Wow.
And from there, on that day, we hiked up to a place called the Everest View Hotel, and the Japanese actually built a hotel there at 3,800 meters, where it's a nice hotel. People can go fly directly to the hotel and sleep there, and for people, because if you're flying directly from Kathmandu to this hotel to 3,800 meters, you will not be acclimatized, and so the hotel provides you oxygen in every room. So and it seems that every room in that hotel has a view of the Everest.
Oh.
So, and of course, the last picture is me. I have a cup of tea with Everest in the background. Okay. Day 4 of our hike, we went to a place called Tengboche. Tengboche is at an elevation of almost 4,000 meters, and the interesting thing about it has one of the world's oldest monastery that is pretty important in the Buddhist amongst the Buddhists. So we stayed a night at Tengboche, and then the next day we continued our hike to a place called Dingboche, which is almost 4,100 meters. And it starts getting cold at this point. From that, before that, you could, it was sometimes cold, sometimes not that cold. But in Dingboche, it got really cold. The nights were very, very cold. And Dingboche, we planned to stay 2 nights. So the first night we got there, we slept, and then the next day we took a hike.
Eid Mubarak, everyone.
Okay.
I am in Dingboche, Nepal, and this is my view on the day of Eid.
Wow.
Once again, a very happy Eid to everybody.
Okay, this was on April 10th, and that was the end of Ramadan. So I don't know how many of you remember, we had the crescent lighting ceremony right here. So at the beginning of Ramadan, and when Ramadan ended, I was here on the crescent lighting, but when Ramadan ended, I was in Nepal, and that's the day I recorded that video, April 10th.
Wow. So at which peak was Everest? Because you showed quite a few.
In this, I don't think there's you can see Everest in this video. So on the day 6, we just stayed at Dingboche, but we did an acclimatization hike. So we were from almost 4,400 meters that we were at. We climbed up to 5,000 meters, and that's me at the summit of. It's a small peak there called Nankar Shek Peak, and we just hiked up there, and we came back down.
Just a walk in the park.
You only spent 949 calories. That's like one bag of treats, man.
And then day 7 of our hike, we went from Dingboche over to Lebuche. Lebuche is a name of a village, and it's also a name of a peak. It's in Nepal, and on the way there, we passed a memorial for, I don't think you can see it clearly, but that's a memorial in 1996 when the whole storm happened and in which many mountaineers were killed. And so they have a memorial on the way to Labuche. And Labuche is at almost 5,000 meters. So that's where, elevation starts hitting you. But fortunately, I took a picture of my oxygen level. It was still 95 there. So I was fortunately, my oxygen level was good even at that altitude. Okay. And we went to the Everest base camp. So one thing that I have been doing once I go to the mountain is I just do a headstand. So that's when I reached Everest base camp, I did a headstand by the famous rock that's now that has Everest base camp written on it. It stands at like almost 5,300 meters, and that's me near the Pomori, in and around. And of course, the base camp is surrounded by all different peaks. You do not have a view of Everest from the Everest base camp, but there are many peaks, many high peaks there out there. Our tents look something like these, and that's me inside my tent from the first day, thinking, what did I get into? Because I've had to spend the next 6 weeks in that tent.
Does everyone have their own tent?
Yes. All the tourist visitors, they get their own tents, but the staff there, they share tents. And
But how many people are at base camp?
okay, this year, about 400, there were about 400 permits issued to climb Everest.
Wow.
And the ratio of the number of tourists to number of the staff needed, that includes the Sherpas, the cooking, the staff that carries the stuff, the base camp staff. So it's almost 1 to 3. So almost there were about another 1,200 people who were helping the staff. So the total of almost 1,200 to 1,500 people
Wow.
at the base camp.
Wow.
It's like a small city, It's, when it is from April onward, April till end of May, it's about a mile long, tent city.
Wow.
So how cold is it at night inside your tent?
Oh, well, didn't take a measurement, but every morning when I woke up, there was frost inside the tent. And I would, before I got into in a previous slide, I showed what my sleeping bag was like. It was rated minus 25 Fahrenheit. And when I would go in my sleeping bag, I would be fully clothed, and before I would take my jacket off or, get comfortable. And another thing that typically people do is they take a hot water bottle, they fill up their water bottle with hot water, or boiling hot water, and keep it inside the sleeping bag so that it warms up quickly.
What about your face? How do you keep it warm?
Typically, either we keep it a buff around it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's.
Pretty cool.
And then from day 9 to day 25, we did like training and acclimatizations, and so in the training, basically we learn how to climb a fixed rope, climb a vertical fixed rope using the ascenders and just your crampons. We took a trek to Mount Labuche, so that's me trying to climb up that vertical wall of ice. And then we took many hikes up the smaller peaks there. One was Mount Labuche, which is at 6,100 meters, which is something that I had already climbed before. But for some reason this time it seemed more difficult. And that's me on the summit of Mount Labuche, right here.
With your shorter boots.
Yes, with my smaller boots. And also what we do is we have to pass through the Khumbu Glacier. So from the base camp to Camp 1, the base camp is actually sitting on the glacier, but it's at the base. But the glacier's name is Khumbu Glacier. When you have to reach to Camp 1, you have to climb through the glacier, and this is how typical landscape looks like on the Khumbu Glacier. All you have is just ice all around you. You're walking on ice. You're next to you is ice boulders, and these boulders could be as big as this table here or this building here.
Oh,
Wow.
So, and we follow the path that is laid out by the what they call the icefall doctors. These are the special Sherpas that are employed by the Nepal government to set up the route and also maintain the ropes for the season. So it's their job to go there initially, secure all the ropes, secure the path. But even then, what happens is, because this is a glacier, all the ice is moving. So what you see today, the path you see today will not be there tomorrow. It will be something different. So these Sherpas, their job is to make sure that the ropes are always they're secured, and the climbers can follow those ropes. Many other training hikes that we did. That's me at there was another peak called Kalapattar.
Wow.
So that is about 5,600 meters high, and behind that you can see the one of that's the Everest peak. So let me explain this in a diagram, because I think the pictures will probably not give a good explanation. So your base camp, okay, and here good that we have it in feet here. So base camp is at 17,598 feet. That's the elevation of base camp. And then, in order to get to base camp to camp 1, you have to pass through this Khumbu ice fall, which is like shifting pack of ice and crevasses. And that is where, if you've seen the movies, you see people crossing the crevasses on the ladders, or doing a vertical climbing vertically on the ladders. And this happens to be, one of the more dangerous parts of the climb because of the shifting ice. Camp 1, it's at 19,600 feet, and relative from Camp 1 to Camp 2, the hike is relatively safer. I mean, there are a few crevasses, but the slope is very gradual, and you don't have to pass through any dangerous shifting ice like we did in the Khumbu Glacier. Camp 2, which is at 2,100 feet, this is where altitude starts affecting people very seriously. So if people are not acclimatized, or if they cannot deal with altitude that well, they will start feeling sick. Basically, there are two types of acute mountain sicknesses. HAPE and HACE, high altitude pulmonary edema or high altitude cerebral edema. The pulmonary one, affects your lungs fill with water and you find breathing is difficult. Still not as dangerous because you can give them oxygen, but the other one, the cerebral edema, is one where your brain starts swelling, and that is more dangerous because you have to get those people down as soon as possible, because there's no space for your brain to expand. So if it swells, then it can be fatal.
Can you take dexamethasone? Isn't there a drug you can take for the altitude sickness? Dexamethasone, I think?
Yeah, I think the common name is Diamox.
Diamox.
Yeah. However, Diamox is only good for maybe 5,000-6,000 meters, because anybody climbing over that has to acclimatize naturally. I mean, that maybe if you have to take some drugs, then I think you should. At that point, people are evacuated. They don't continue with medications.
How did you do? How did you feel?
Fortunately, I did not get altitude sickness even when I went up to the summit. So, of course, from Camp 3 onwards, you start using supplemental oxygen. So I was using supplemental oxygen, but I did not feel the effects of altitude. So, Camp 3, which is at 23,000 feet, that's when we are in a serious elevation, 7,300 meters or 23,600 feet. And in Camp 3 to Camp 4, the climb gets progressively more difficult. So if the difficulty level from base camp to Camp 1 is 1, then Camp 1 to Camp 2, it's still 1. It's not that difficult after that. But Camp 2 to Camp 3, the difficulty level would be 5, and from there, Camp 2 to Camp 3, it would be 10, and then higher. And of course, you know, when you're going for your summit push, after Camp 4, you enter what is known as the death zone. And the reason it is called the death zone is that a human body cannot survive at that elevation for more than 48 hours. So the rule of thumb is, once you are in death zone, you have to go up to the summit and come back down within 24 hours, because that still gives you 24-hour buffer. So, and the reason people do not survive at that altitude is because your body cells do not regenerate at that altitude, at that low level of oxygen. Even if you give them supplemental oxygen, the body cells don't regenerate. So the your body begins to die. Your organs will start shutting down. And I mean, only in exceptional cases there have been, you know, some guy from Texas, Beck Weathers, actually he was in the 1996 disaster, and he survived, although he lost his hands and nose, and but that was one of the rare exceptional cases where he was given up for dead, but he walked back.
When you said that you started using supplemental oxygen, does that mean you had it on you and you were taking it as you climbed?
That is correct.
Okay.
So the way the oxygen is, I mean, we have oxygen tanks that are 4 kilograms, each tank weighs 4 kilograms, and there is oxygen good for, like, you know, 5 to 7 hours, depending on the flow rate that you use, and you have it in your backpack, and you connect it through a tube on a mask, and
Right.
and that's what you.
So you had that from, did I understand, from Camp 4 up to the top?
We had it. We needed it from Camp 3 up to the top. Yeah, but we started using it after Camp 2, because there are 2 parts to it. One is, like, you know, you're needing the oxygen, and the second part is, you know, before this I'd never even touched an oxygen mask.
Right.
So getting used to the mask itself, you know, it takes some time. So we started using the oxygen from Camp 2 when we didn't need the oxygen, just so that, you know, we get used to the oxygen mask, how it fits on your face, and, you know, learning to breathe. It's a little different, but definitely it becomes easier, because without oxygen you can't.
And did you increase the flow rate as you got higher?
Uh,
Or does that not matter?
No, we do increase, because when we increase the flow rate as we get higher, and at night when we are sleeping, we can decrease the flow rate. So typically, I think when we were climbing, we used 1.5 liters per minute, and then when we were sleeping, we took it down to 1 liter. And as the climb got harder, we went up to 2 liters and 2.5 liters. I think max I went to was 2.5 liters, but you can go up to 3 or 4 liters per minute.
Are you in communication with your family at all, or?
No, because there is no. I mean, after base camp, there is no radio signal. There's no cell signal.
No idea what was going on?
Yeah. But
So I actually, so his Sherpa, the guy that was with him, he was able to communicate with the guy down at base camp. So every now and then I would get a text message, and then there was someone, Aga was with you, and she carried a phone, I guess a satellite phone. So later I can share a little joke with you guys about what had happened and how we communicated, but I was getting very choppy in between messages that he was okay.
So there was no direct communication. So what we had was, the base camp manager would maybe send one text every day to Lubna saying that, okay, this is where they are good, they're okay, those type of messages. And also, so that was a means of communication, but there was no way I could communicate directly, because as she said, there was somebody who was carrying what's one of the texting device, satellite texting device from Garmin, and she was able to text Lubna, and it was maybe one text a day that we were changing. So by this time, we were done with our training, we did our rotations, we went up to Camp 1, Camp 2, and then came back down. So, and after that, all we had to do was rest for a few days. And the rest was, we flew down to Namche Bazaar, which is at a lower altitude, to really do rest and do nothing. And this process, when people say acclimatization, what we really do is we go up to a high altitude, spend some time there, and then come down to a lower altitude and sleep. The reason for doing that is once you go up to a high altitude, your body is kind of shocked at the lower levels of oxygen. And when you come down to the lower altitude, that's when your body produces more red blood cells. And that allows your body to carry more oxygen or take more oxygen. And that is what is acclimatization to elevation. That you kind of force your body to increase its capacity to carry oxygen. So our planned time to rest in Namche Bazaar was like 5 days, but the weather was not favorable, so we were stuck for another couple of days before heading back. And of course, that's me when we were heading back, was in the helicopter, one of the best parts. And then finally the summit push. So I didn't have the energy, and my focus was more on safety, so I was not taking that many pictures, but there are a few pictures. So that's me when we started on the night of May 13th. Actually, by the time we started, it was like 1 a.m. on May 14th. Wow. And after that, it was a continuous climb. So from Camp 1 to Camp 2 was easy, and even from Camp 2 onwards, actually halfway to Camp 3 is a fairly straightforward climb. But at that point, you get into what is the nearly vertical climb, and you're on fixed ropes, you're pulling yourself, you are carrying the oxygen tank and breathing. Of course, that helps, but still, it does not make it easy. And some of those, from that point on, you start encountering what is known as the blue ice, which is ice that has been frozen for a long, long time, maybe thousands or million years, and you cannot really, make a dent with your crampons or something. So the only footholds you have in blue ice is what the Sherpas or people before you may have made with their ice axes, and those are the small footholds, and of course your safety line that helps you climb those slopes with the blue ice.
Did anyone slip? Like when you were?
Oh, lots of people slip, and
You're
this is
like
where.
all in a line. So what happens if someone slips? They hit the people behind them.
Okay, the way, so let me. Basically, this is your ascender, and this is attached to the rope, like this. So this one, once it goes up, you cannot pull it down. So this is your ascender, and from here, the rope is attached to your harness. So if you slip, you're basically supported by this ascender. You will not fall down any further. But worst case, let's say if you don't have this ascender attached, then you have your safety also attached, and you will probably slip to the next anchor point below you. So after Camp 1 to, Camp 2 to Camp 3, Camp 3 we stayed a night, and next morning 5 a.m. we started our push for Camp 4. This is actually a picture I took from going up to Camp 4, and as you can see, people are look like ants. It's a very hard slope, and from Camp 4 to the summit. So once you reach Camp 4, we only rested for a few hours, and then we started our summit push. So it was May 18th evening, around 7:30 p.m. or so. By the time we left, it was 8 o'clock that we started our summit push. And of course, if the climb before was hard, from Camp 4 to the summit was much worse. It was a constant grind, and of course with depleting oxygen in the death zone for the first time. And you start seeing people who have to be, helped back. I saw some people, actually one incident that I remember is there was this guy who was right before us, and he was screaming something, and the only thing I could catch was he was Kenji, Kenji something. So I don't know what he was saying. So my Sherpa took me around the person, which was again a lot more difficult, because then you have to detach your ascender, put it around the guy, then take your safety, put it around the guy, and then. So I asked my Sherpa, what's this guy screaming about? So my Sherpa looked at him and said, oh, well, his oxygen ran out.
Oh my God.
So so incidentally, he recognized that that guy belonged to a different team. So we climbed up that rock wall. There was a little bit of a ledge there. So once we sat there, he told he found some other Sherpas from that team and told them that there's some team member of yours who needs oxygen. So somebody went down, helped him up, and then they changed the oxygen tank.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
So, I mean, it sounds like, how much rest did you get? I mean, you said you had a couple of hours rest. I'm thinking, I'm not sure when you're sleeping on this period. You
well,
must
after
be
Camp 3, we got there around 5 p.m. in the evening. Around 6:30 or so, we went to sleep. Woke up at 5 a.m. And from that point, this is 5 a.m. on May 18th that I woke up. I did not sleep until I came back from the summit on May 19th afternoon. So a good 32 hours.
And you're eating and drinking as you do this, because how do you keep going?
Yes, you have to hydrate yourself and keep having something. At that time, your appetite is really gone. You kind of you have to force yourself to eat. So anytime you're resting, you take some, and it's not like you can take anything hot. Of course, when you start, you try to take hot water bottles and put them inside your suit, but that gets cold eventually. And then so you're either eating some bars, energy bars, or you're having some snacks, some
And you have to drink water.
You have to drink water.
Are there
So-
like oxygen tanks along the way that you can utilize, or?
Yes. So what the team does is, instead of, you typically need 5 to 8 tanks to climb up. So what the team does is they go in advance and they place the tanks at several places. So my team had the tanks placed at, all the way up to the summit. So I used about 5 tanks for going up and coming all the way down. And
we've all read about all the garbage in tanks, especially that are left on the surface. I mean, so the Sherpas have to carry those down now? Is that what happens? The empty oxygen
they have
tanks?
started a cleanup effort. That in itself is a big challenge,
Yeah.
because just taking a step there by yourself, even with supplemental oxygen, is difficult. So I can imagine. But there is a lot of garbage on the mountain.
Still.
They have started the effort of cleaning up, and hopefully it will bear fruit in a few years. But it is hard work. But I think the people have been working hard, and I think by now about like some 11,000 tons of garbage has been brought down already.
Wow.
But incidentally, at Camp 2, one of our Sherpas found an oxygen tank from 1972. Yeah. So he was digging something, and he found something blue color. He pulled it out, and we saw that the marking on the tank was from 1972. So super. So May 19th, 7:24 a.m. I was at the summit finally.
So how many, the people who are climbing, they're called tourists, as opposed to a Sherpa, the people making.
Well, the climbers.
Right, other climbers, so how many climbers were in your group that you?
So we started off with 8 people in our team. There were 4 from the US and 4 from Poland. 2 people from the US. One guy from the US. He was from Arizona. He decided to quit while we were in our training period. at the very initial part in the Khumbu Glacier, I guess, he kind of got scared of the boulders, the ice boulders and the falling ice, the risk of all that, and he turned back. The other American guy, he was from New Mexico, and he had some breathing issues at Camp 2. So his oxygen level, actually, the next morning he didn't show up for breakfast. So when somebody went to check on him, his oxygen level was 36%. It was dangerously low. So they evacuated him immediately there. And at that point, like, he also found out that he has some pre-existing heart condition. So he had to. He was lucky to be. Otherwise,
Stress test.
How did they evacuate them? Did they bring them?
up until Camp 2, helicopters can fly up there.
You don't have to answer this, but what was the budget for this? Your budget?
It's high.
You don't have to answer.
No, I can answer it because the total budget is around pay that you pay to others is about 50,000. Plus you have to spend about $10,000 on your gear and plus travel.
So the first number was 50,000, you said?
50.
50.
Another 10 for the equipment.
Another 10 for the equipment, and then your travel plus your travel. So add another 6K for that. Another incident.
You pay the Sherpas, then you pay the company who pays the Sherpas, is that?
We pay the company and they pay the Sherpas, and of course after that, of course you also pay. You establish a personal relationship with them, so
Sure,
you
sure.
give them something extra.
Yeah, because
yourself.
that's their livelihood, right? I mean,
Yes.
they do that all the time, not all the time, but I mean during the climbing season, April and May,
Yes.
that's.
I mean, they start from
make enough
February
money to
onwards
live for
because
the year.
yes. Many of the Sherpas, they don't have. This is their only source of livelihood.
Yeah.
So the Sherpas, the icefall Sherpas who go and set up the ropes, they make good money. I mean, according to the Nepal standards, they make about $10,000 in a season.
That's very good.
But the other Sherpas who help us climb, they make about $6,000 plus all the tips that they get from us.
But getting back to your team, so 2 people
So
dropped out so far.
Two Americans dropped out. So
What T-shirt do they get?
I tried. Almost, they get it almost.
almost yeah. Well, they will either try again or probably never go back again.
But all the Polish people made it?
Amongst the Polish people, one of them, because of medical reasons, he
I did leave.
called it quits and he went back. So 3 Polish people, and so 5 out of 8 we submitted, which is a better ratio than the other teams because typically, like I think this year from the visit, I don't have the actual, but this is just anecdotal. I heard about like 200 climbers submitted, not counting the Sherpas. So the success rate was like slightly below 50%.
200 out of how many?
About 420 permits were issued.
Are there a lot of women on the?
Not a lot, but there are increasing number of women year after year. Yes.
When you were at the summit, because you said this on one of your slides, it's like a bottleneck getting up there at the end,
Yes.
How long were you actually standing there?
Okay. Fortunately, we didn't have a bottleneck. We were not held up. I mean, of course, the place is called the Hillary Step.
Yeah.
So you go up to the highest point in Nepal because the true summit is really, it's indisputed between China and Nepal, so there's no boundary there. But from the highest point in Nepal, you go down to the Hillary Step, and it's a narrow ledge, and I don't have. I was too scared to even take out my camera at that time. I was hanging on to my life. But it's a very, very narrow ledge, and of course, pictures are available on the internet. But it's a very narrow ledge, and then you walk along with your safety, and then you climb up, and then you get to the main summit. So since that part, only one person can go at a time. And of course, if somebody is coming around, then both have to stop, and it's a very tedious process for 2 people if you have to pass another person. And incidentally, on May 19th, when I climbed and I returned safely, on May 21st, when there was 6 people on that ledge, and that ledge broke. So 2 climbers, one British guy and his Sherpa, they died in that in that ledge collapse. The other 4 people were fortunately they had their safety on, and they managed to rescue themselves. What may have happened is, I feel like, at the point when you are getting to the safety line, you basically take the safety off from one anchor and put it on the next anchor. So they were probably in that process when the ledge broke, and they could not save it.
So who took the picture?
This picture, one of my Sherpa took my picture.
Okay, I mean, you can't even see your face, it's so cold.
Yeah, I had my glasses off, and of course, and I think, in my other picture, I took my
Right.
glasses off.
And how cold was it, do you know?
The estimated temperature, I mean, what we had heard in the weather reports was it was going to be about -15.
Whoa.
So, and then because I was on the summit, on the next day I found like I had some frostbite symptoms on my cheeks.
Wow.
So I did not want to take any chances. I did not know how serious it was. There's no doctor available. So I actually evacuated myself from camp. I came down all the way to Camp 2, and from Camp 2 I just took a helicopter to a hospital in Nepal and checked myself in. So my first picture is there. That's when, and another thing was, I did not want to come back to Jersey and look for a doctor who treats frostbite. I wanted to get treated there.
Smart. It looks like you got sunburn,
Yes.
or snowbird or something.
Snowburn. So fortunately my frostbite wasn't serious. It was not even level 1. So the doctor looked at it and said, oh, within 24 hours you should be fine. And so the next day I was discharged, and immediately I took the next flight home and came back to Moa.
Relief, right? It's so very
So before I have, this is me leaving for Everest and coming back on May 25th, 2024.
It looks like did you have less with you? Did you have less stuff with you, or is it just the picture?
No, it's just a picture. I had my 2 duffel bags, and coming back I had the same things.
Looks like you lost weight. Did you lose weight?
I did, yes.
Oh my God.
Do you have like a number, like you were the 900th person ever to summit? Is there a number?
There is a roster kept of the number of people that have summited since 1953, May 29, 1953. And the number today of unique people who have climbed Mount Everest is around 6,600 or so.
So do you have a number where you,
Oh.
what term came in that?
I don't.
They don't give you
yeah.
numbers, like.
Yeah, and I don't think the record is kept of like who came at what
Right.
point. It's just this year, because many people who may have summited this year, some people, it depends on when their summit success is recorded.
Right.
Somebody who may have summited after me may have their name recorded before me. So that we don't know that, but yeah.
How long did you rest when you got home?
Oh, not long enough. He didn't rest actually. We just literally came back the day before yesterday from Ecuador, where Jaffer and my son Nasser summited Mount Chimborazo
Finally!
in
Did
Ecuador.
it?
Yes.
Wow.
So so he actually attempted, I think, 2 times.
Nasir, why don't you come up here?
Nasser summited, this was his first time.
No.
No, this is his second time.
It's third time too.
Third time.
Yay.
So my son Nasser and my youngest son Sammy, they've climbed with me. My oldest one, we only have hiked. He is not into climbing. But Sammy, so Sammy was with me on Mount Labuche and the Everest Base Camp trek. Nasser and I, we climbed in Ecuador. We climbed in, and of course we climbed in California, Mount Whitney together. Sammy, come up here.
Nasser, why don't you tell them about, very briefly, your experience at Chimborazo?
It was a 20,500 foot mountain. We started the climb up at midnight, and it took about 7 hours to reach the summit. It was a constant slope, really steep, up on the glacier. After about 7 hours, I got up there. And yeah, we got up there, got some good pictures, came back down.
7 hours for him, it took me 8 hours, so.
You were still
So
tired.
actually, the guide made all the, there were 5 people who went up?
Yeah,
Right, so the guide actually held Nasser back. He said, no, you hang out here because it's gonna take them longer to get So he started the summit push about an hour or 2 after they left.
Did it feel, now after doing Everest, did it feel any easier than it would have another time or no?
no, not
It's
at
still
all.
hard as heck.
Yeah, every mountain has its own unique challenges,
Yeah.
and just because you've done one doesn't mean the other will be easy. It's a-
And when you did this one, you didn't need oxygen.
No, not at this
that-
altitude.
Okay.
So up to 23,000 feet or 24,000 feet, you don't really need oxygen.
So what's next for you?
Now the plan is I'm going to Switzerland with my wife next week. A planned vacation that we are we planned it about more than a year ago. So
Are you gonna do mountains or are you gonna just?
we are going to do nothing. Lots of nothing.
That sounds
We're gonna
great.
take cable cars everywhere.
I think your stress level's gonna be very different.
Yes, yes.
That's great.
For sure.
Yes, sir.
Have you done like the Colorado high peaks?
No, I have not. That's something maybe we can try out, and that's something we'll do in the coming years.
Nasser, I like your t-shirt, my dad climbed Mount Everest, that's very neat.
So actually Jaffer brought back t-shirts for us, and we all have, my husband climbed Everest, and my grandpa climbed Everest, and all the boys
Sweet.
have,
Oh,
Yeah.
that's great.
So now which climb did you do with your youngest son? That was the
We
base
cla-
camp?
Yeah, but no, that was the trek to the Everest base camp in Mount Labuche.
Ah,
So,
okay.
so
Sammy,
that
you
was
wanna tell them a little bit about Nepal and your experience to Lubuche?
Mount Labuche was definitely very difficult for me. I was only 14 at the time. We did it in 2019, and the majority of the mountain was just like a steep slope up, and it's you couldn't really see much. You only see like the next anchor point in front of you, and I don't know how long it took us to climb. I think in total around like 20 hours up and down, maybe more. We got lost a couple times on the way, and yeah, it was very difficult, but being on the summit was definitely a great experience. It was the summit was probably like the size of that round table right there.
Oh.
So there was not a lot of room to stand.
I have relatives who lived in Nepal for a long time, and the children used to go on treks for class trips. They'd go for a trek into the Himalayas for a week or something like that. And they'd go to Nagakort. It was a very famous spot where they would go to, and you can see the sun rise and set over Mount Everest, but it was long.
There are lots of trails in Nepal. I mean, Nepal is definitely a beautiful country. I would encourage everyone to visit. You don't have to climb there to go there, but there's like lots of things you can do in Nepal.
So what was the anecdote you were gonna tell us about the woman who texted you?
So, every now and then I would receive a text message, just letting me know that Jaffer was safe. And at one point, I said I replied to the text message because I received a text message saying, I love you. So I wrote back, I love you too. So then the person who was, and I actually wrote back, I love you. And then the person who was texting said, I love you too. So I said, oh, so if Jaffer ever found out you said this to me, he'd throw you off the But then later, the tables turned on me. I found out that was a lady who was climbing with him. It wasn't,
One of the Polish climbers.
So the whole time I was thinking that it was a man who was like texting me because of the name. It could be a male or a female name, and the name was Aga. So I assumed that it was a Sherpa who was with him, but then I later found out that it was a climber that was with him the whole way, and she was texting, and she just had heard a few stories about me, and she just said, "I love you too." So,
Her name was Agnieszka, but you know, short for we shortened it to Aga.
and I think it's really important, which was a major piece that you kind of didn't mention, which I think is worth a mention, is your descent from the Hillary Peak, which was you know, something that gave me a heart attack. Because as easy it sounds, I mean, you made it sound very easy, or, you know, going up, but I heard from many climbers that coming down, descending is, you know, equally hard. And he had this issue where he had the frostbite, so his cheeks had actually bubbled up, they became like they had ice cubes, so the eyes started to shut, and he was not able to see. And the Sherpa was guiding him down the Hillary steps, saying, put one foot forward to your right. So now imagine walking a line down and not seeing anything.
Wow.
And at that point, I received a message that he was being evacuated. And that was definitely something to bring my blood pressure to 220.
Isn't that where most of the people do get into trouble coming
Yes.
down?
Coming down is when most people, I mean, 'cause there are a couple of reasons for that. Number one is, you know, going down is when you actually people see the height you're at. And also the other big reason is that, you know, people generally exhaust their energy going up. So they don't have the energy coming down. So going up, I know you have the adrenaline because you see the summit very close, so you have that, you know, you force yourself to get the energy, you go up. And then after that you've achieved it, so that's one of the main reasons why they say, you know, only use up 60% of your energy going up, leave the next 40% for coming down as well.
That being that tired, I imagine you're ripe for mistakes.
That too, yes. Because you've, at that point, so I was up at 5 a.m. on May 18th. I finished my climb. I was at the summit on May 19th at 7:24, which is already 26 hours. I still, and then I had to come down. A typical climb, which takes around 5 to 8 hours. And because of my inability to see clearly, my vision was very blurry, so it took me about 8 hours to come down.
So when you go down to Camp 4? Is that
Camp
what
4.
you go down to?
So, and that's when we rested for the whole night. So we were without sleep for almost 30 hours.
Wow.
So there is a lot of, you have to be alert, and there is a lot of room for the mistakes. And
Did
You're a brave guy.
you guys drink any coffee or anything?
people generally take those
Diamonds.
no, not diamonds, the, you know, the bars with a lot of caffeine in it. I didn't. There are, you know, there are some people who basically carry cigarettes with them and just chew on the tobacco to get that hit. So I've heard all sorts of things.
So I have to ask the question, I know people, sort of, the people who die on the mountain, they leave them there?
Yes, after a certain point, it's very difficult to bring the bodies down, and then within a few days, the bodies that are there, they're frozen solid. So they have been, what people have been doing is, you must have heard of the green boots. I mean, if you followed the thing. So this is, green boots is not on this side, it's on the other side, from the Chinese side. So there's an Indian climber who was climbing up and who died on the mountain, and he was wearing green boots. So he came to be known as, his body came to be known as green boots, and people were using it as a marker. So out of respect for him, you know, some climbers actually moved him to a location where you can't see him. So there are they estimate about 200 bodies in Everest, even now. And some stories are, you know, pretty tragic, especially, you know, when I think about it. In 1996, Rob Hall, who was leading the expedition from New Zealand, and there was a climber from Ohio who was making his third attempt. So he did not want. So Rob Hall, basically, against his better judgment, helped him get to the summit. And then this climber who went up was not able to come down, and Rob Hall would not leave him. And I think that was pretty heroic of him, because at that point, had he thought, he could have probably easily saved himself, because he was a very accomplished climber. But he tried helping this other climber, and until, like, he got so frostbitten that, he could not come down himself, and he died. So they say his body is right under the Hillary step. Of course, we didn't see them. There were two bodies of two Mongolian climbers who died like 2 days before we went up there. Their bodies were out there, but I did not want to carry their memories, so I didn't want to look at that part. So there are, I thought there was somebody had lost their coat. So when I told the Sherpa, is that somebody probably lost their coat, because I lost my glove, one of my gloves, I had a spare one. So I said, oh, that somebody lost their coat. So he says, no, that's a body.
Oh, yeah, and I just wanna add, I think, we're all, like, this is beautiful that we're able to laugh and smile about it, but, also when Jafar returned, I feel like, it took him a while to really just come, number one, I think reality hit that he came back to his family, so he was very emotional about that for a while. And then weeks after, also, it took him time to really process what he had actually, undertaken and very, successfully summited. But then those memories that he doesn't want to talk about kept coming back. So it takes that type of a person with that kind of mindset and mental health, and you have to have really, strong willpower up there to be able to, not just physically, but mentally, you need to be prepared. So.
Thank you so much, everyone.